Thank you for that kind introduction. And thank you all for joining us today, or whether you're watching this on a recording. I just want to appreciate all of you for taking such an active interest in your health. That's one thing that I think we've all learned, and you would agree with this, that our health is really in our hands, and it's our personal responsibility. And the healthcare system is not there to actually guide you to a healthy lifestyle, but you all have taken the initiative to learn the foundations of a healthy lifestyle. And I want to appreciate the leadership for this conference and bringing such valuable information to you. Today, we're going to just take probably the next hour and 15 minutes or so for a presentation. And then, I'll leave 30 to 45 minutes for questions and answers, because I really enjoy that part of it. Just as a brief background as we get to know each other, I started my health journey learning about the power of lifestyle medicine and plant-based nutrition more than 20 years ago, when I encountered a patient that said to me, "Dr. Stoll, can't you help me? I'm falling apart." It's something that we all hear all the time today, that people around us, friends, family, say as they get older, "I'm falling apart." And I really thought that was just the inevitable consequence of aging. As we get older, parts break down, things hurt, we develop diseases, and the role of the doctor is to diagnose and manage those diseases so they don't end up causing a greater degree of disability or early death. I simply that day asked a question of my patient. I said, "What is falling apart? What does it mean to you?" And she answered me in a way that I was not prepared for. She said, "Dr. Stoll, falling apart means to me that my marriage is falling apart because my husband is very tired taking care of me. Because my care demands a lot of his time. Our finances are falling apart because of the donut hole in Medicare. I can't travel to see my grandchildren because the flight is 5 hours long. Because of the pain, I can't sit in church and attend those activities. I'm depressed and I don't have friends." And then she said, "Can you help me?" And it was in that moment, there was a long pause, that I realized I had not been prepared to actually help somebody restore their quality of life. I didn't even know if it was possible. And I further asked myself questions. Where does disease come from? What is the cause for many of these common diseases that we see in our neighborhoods, our churches, our community groups, or in our own families? What is the origin? And can they actually be reversed? If you can discover the root and pull out the root, perhaps the body can actually regenerate. And that's exactly what I discovered in my research. The body has a greater power to regenerate itself than I ever imagined possible. And still to this day, more than 20 years later, I am surprised at how quickly some bodies regenerate when they're given the right opportunity, the right nutrition, and the right rest opportunities to begin regenerating. In just days, the body can begin to bounce back from decades of unhealthy choices. So we have this regenerative capacity inside of our bodies, and it also exists inside of biologic systems. And so that's the good news, and maybe a hope-filled message that I hope you take away today, is that every biologic system, when it's given the right opportunity, can bounce back, including the earth. Today, I'd just like to take you on a bit of a journey that is my own personal journey of discovering the power of especially nutrition and lifestyle to restore that resiliency and balance inside of our bodies that leads to regeneration, healing, and a restoration of our quality of life. I think it's important as a reminder for all of us that the natural state of the body is health, and disease is acquired because of our environment and some of the choices that are presented to us in our environment. But your body is truly amazing. And sometimes we don't remember how incredible our bodies really are. Your body has, including the bacteria in your body, more than 100 trillion cells, perform 37,000 billion chemical reactions per second. That's a lot of activity that you don't have to think about. Every second, you replace 3.8 million cells, and 200 types of cells get generally replaced in 7 to 10 years. Doesn't mean that we have the same cells that we did when we were 10 and have 10-year-old cells, but our body is constantly in a state of repairing and replenishing. Your heart beats 35 million times per year, pumping blood through 60,000 miles of blood vessels that are maintained a lot better than the roads in our cities. And it reaches 40,000 million individual blood vessels. In 1 minute, there's 60 million chemical reactions that take place to create 120,000 different proteins. And those proteins are read from blueprints on the DNA. The blueprints are carried to a ribosome where it is read, interpreted, and the machinery begins building proteins that go out and do all kinds of things in our body in every minute of the day. And all of this is coordinated by 100 billion neurons in your brain and 100 trillion connections or synapses in your brain. And the beautiful thing is that all of this is transpiring while we are living our lives, pursuing the things we love, enjoying a beautiful sunshiny blue day like we have here in Nashville today, playing games, listening to music, engaging with people. Your body is designed to allow you to interface with life and you don't have to think about it. And as you all know, the lifestyle choices that we make on a daily basis empower, enable, and equip these transactions and cells to work, or it begins undermining and eroding those resources, beginning to deplete these cellular reactions so that it makes it more difficult for us to interface in life. So this all tells us that we harvest from the habit seeds that we plant on a daily basis. Our bodies really are like the soil. And every day we plant seeds from the habit choices that we're making. What we eat, how much we sleep, how we decide to move and stretch our bodies, how we deal with stress, mitigating or allowing stress to ramp up our system, love and community, and then the habits that may be unhealthy that we're also making choices of, tobacco, alcohol, etc. Those little seeds are always planted in the soil, and some of them take longer than others to see the effects. And that's one of the dangers of an unhealthy lifestyle, is that you can plant unhealthy seeds and they may take years to begin germinating and sprouting. And so you feel like you're okay. Those choices did not have an immediate impact, but eventually there's a harvest from those habit seeds. And the harvest may come up as diabetes, as heart disease, as autoimmune disease. Any of those host of diseases, including cancer, can present itself. And we know that it didn't just happen, but this was a process from seeds that were planted, the germination of a disease, the perpetuation of the unhealthy habits, that's the watering, and the growth of these unhealthy seeds. But in the same way, we can plant seeds of health by making those lifestyle choices. And you discover that harvest happens a lot more quickly than the disease harvest. This is what we see even in the health immersions that I do for corporations, where 100 people spend a week with us. And in just a week, their bodies rebound to health. More vibrancy, more energy, reduced pain, discontinuation of medications. In just a week, their bodies bounce back. The body is ready to regenerate itself with the right planting of the right seeds. And where does all of this begin? So certainly our habits are important, right? And we all have heard this statement, you are what you, and immediately I think you're probably thinking, eat. And that is so true. Food is still one of the foundations, the cornerstones of vibrancy and health, disease reversal, disease prevention, disease suspension. It really is food. Food is the most important component. But what is driving our food choices? It's what we think, believe, and say. So yes, food is critical, but so much of our food choices really begin at a level above that. It's what we've been trained to think about food. It's what we believe about food in our relationship. It's how we speak about ourselves, inside and outside. And also important, and I'll weave this through the entire presentation, community is the secret sauce of a healthy lifestyle. When we think about the blue zones, yes, they have largely a plant-based diet. They eat a cup of beans every single day. They're active. They have loving relationships. They are getting a good night's sleep. They don't have a lot of stress. But the real secret of the blue zones is that it's a community. And people don't even really have to think about the choices that they're making because it's how the community lives. And we know from the research that you are the sum total of your closest friends, including your microbiome. Your microbiome becomes, over time, like the 5 to 10 people closest to you. In a study, 2023 in Honduras, they found that the more central people were inside of a community, the more alike their microbiomes became. The more peripheral they lived outside of a community, the more different their microbiomes became. So we really are the sum total of our friends, even down to the bacteria types and the populations inside of our gut. But we also become like our friends in the way we think about food and even modulate the amount of food we eat. In another study, they looked at individuals eating together, and they found that because of a process called mirroring, we don't listen to our own cues about how much we eat. We watch the cues of the other person. And despite having a commitment to eating less, individuals that were eating with someone else naturally ate as much as the other person did. So if we're eating with people that eat more or eat more unhealthy, we're naturally drawn to do the same. So one of the secret sauces of really being healthy long-term is to develop a healthy community around yourself. Yes, engaging with other people, but there's a close-knit community of people that you're regularly engaging in that can inspire you, that can empower you, support you, hold you accountable, share ideas and recipes, and bring you along in a natural flow along the river of health. Now, kind of at the outset, as we talk about food, I always like to remove guilt and shame around the idea of lifestyle choices. This is Maya Angelou, and I love this statement. She said, "I did then what I knew how to do, but now that I know better, I do better." And so for all of us, we grew up in a culture that is unhealthy. We grew up in a fast food culture. We grew up in a culture that promotes sugar and sugar-sweetened beverages. We grew up in a culture where ultra-processed food is normal, and the average person eats 63% of their calories from ultra-processed food. We grew up in a culture where it's normal to sit in front of a screen for hours every single day. We grew up in a culture where it's normal to be stressed and work long hours. And so we all became enculturated by the environment that is around us. And we made the choices that other people were making because that's what communities do. But now that you're learning something new, because you're attending this amazing conference, The Real Truth About Health, you're learning to know better. And when we know better, it makes it much easier to do better. So if guilt or shame ever start to slip in, and this also applies to us in that way that we interact with other people. We just simply say, I did then what I knew how to do, but now that I know better, I'm doing better. And the same for other people that are making different choices. Perhaps they just don't know yet, or they're not ready to make the choice to do better. I'd like to just share with you a brief story of a friend of mine. This is Marcy Madrid and her husband, Carlos. And Marcy is a vice president at Midland Health in Midland, Texas. And Marcy is a mother of 6 children, a busy executive at the hospital, and her husband owns his own business. In 2014, Marcy was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. She went through the normal medical care, tried the medications, but had a number of side effects from the medications, and found herself slowly losing her quality of life, again, falling apart, to the point where she was barely making it through the workday, coming home in the evening, collapsing on the couch. And her husband, Carlos, had to pick up the remainder of the work activities, taking care of the children, doing laundry, dropping the kids off, making meals. And they were desperate because healthcare didn't have an answer. She was referred to see a specialist in Dallas, Texas, that deals with multiple sclerosis. The appointment was set for June of 2016. In 2015, I had a conversation with Marcy about lifestyle and transforming her diet. And it was the only option that she had. So she did. she made an amazing radical transformation of her diet. Again, she wasn't able to exercise, and she worked on some stress management, but she changed her diet, removed stress, and she saw a radical transformation of her health. These are two pictures of her MRI. On your left is the MRI that shows the spinal cord here inside of the red circle. To the front of that is the spine, and to the back is the back of the spine or the skin of the back of the neck. And we can notice inside of the spinal cord, it's very white and patchy. And that is evidence of inflammation inside the spinal cord, which was contributing to her symptoms of tingling, numbness, diffuse weakness, and fatigue. 6 months later, again, we see inside of the red circle, her spinal cord has the same dark appearance. All of the inflammation had completely resolved in just 6 months on a healthy transformation diet. Again, here's a picture of her brain, and inside of the red circle, we see a white lesion. That's an inflammatory lesion in the brain. 6 months later, that inflammatory lesion has resolved. An amazing transformation. The doctor in Dallas, Texas, was shocked and could not believe that this had happened. He had never seen someone go into remission through a dietary intervention. And because of Marcy's case, Marcy, this doctor in Dallas, began to change the way that he managed his patients, even doing research looking at the power of plant-based nutrition and lifestyle to suspend multiple sclerosis and send it into remission. So Marcy's life not only changed her life, but her experience began to shift the doctor in Dallas, Texas. It impacted her family. Here's children now that mom could be fully present for. This is why I love what we're doing, lifestyle medicine and nutrition, because it gives people their life back, the quality of life that is so important. Mom is now vibrantly alive and present and available for her family. Marcy started a not-for-profit in Midland, Texas called Healthy City that hosted a number of activities, including a large conference with more than 700 people that came annually to learn about the power of plant-based nutrition and the power of the plate. So we can begin to see the regenerative opportunity for changing what's on our plate. Not only did it reverse the condition, not only did it resolve the inflammation inside of her spinal cord and her brain, not only did it improve her quality of life and return energy and vitality, it changed her relationship with her husband. It improved her opportunity to be mom for her children. It changed the hospital system as she began to share with doctors and start programs inside of the hospital. And it changed her community, even hosting an annual conference. So it's just a glimpse of the regenerative opportunity, that it's not just changing what's on our plate, eating more plants, thinking that's the end. This plate is very powerful, one of the most powerful forces on the planet, because collectively, 1 billion plates can change just about anything. So just a question for you all. As we think about what we put on our plate every single day, how many pounds of food does the average person eat in a year? Maybe you've never stopped to think about that. We go to the grocery store every day, we buy food, we cook food, we go out to eat, but every day we're buying and eating several pounds of food. So when the research was done, they found that the average person eats about 2,000 pounds of food per year. Now, that is the equivalent of this little Chevy Volt. So people are eating from bumper to bumper every single year, 2,000 pounds of food, 100 bites a day. And so when we think about the cumulative effect of those bites, that amount of food passing through our body on a daily basis, we can begin to appreciate the cumulative effect of that food on our body, how the components of that food, what it's made up of, what's included inside of the macronutrients, protein, fat, and carbohydrates, and how that makes a difference in the function of our bodies, in the health of our cells every single year. But we also have to begin to think about, and we'll talk through in this lecture, the impact of those 100 bites, 2,000 pounds on the food supply chain. on the environment, on the soil. It all has an impact. But because it has such a profound impact, and as we've seen negatively, it can have the same positive regenerative impact when we begin to change how we're making choices around those 100 bites or 2,000 pounds every year. And our food system has changed dramatically. This is from USDA data, which shows us that in 1909, the average person was eating 5 pounds of sugar or sweeteners per year per person. 5 pounds. Today, it's about 140 pounds. And it's not that we're buying bags of sugar. It's because sugar is included in every food product today. We've gone from 4 pounds of oil to 74 pounds of oil per person per year. And one of the challenges is the calorie density of oil. Oil is 120 calories per tablespoon, or 4,000 calories per pound. And so as people are eating more oil, they're eating greater calorie density. As we see here, the average person's added 500 total calories to their diet. Those calories get stored as fat, which partially accounts for the rising obesity rates globally. We've dramatically increased the total meat consumption, more than 100 pounds, and added 14 pounds of fish. Overfishing fisheries in the oceans and depleting fisheries, and moving to farm-raised fish with all of the environmental impact of that. We've added 30 pounds of cheese. And imagine this, 53 gallons of soft drinks per person per year. That's the equivalent of about a bathtub and a half full of soft drinks. And somebody's drinking mine because I'm not drinking 53 gallons. So all of this, and this is not just in the United States, this is globally. This westernized dietary pattern, this westernized lifestyle has been exported all over the world. And it's led to this trend that the leading cause of disability and death globally is diet and non-communicable diseases. And we can see on the left here, the trend line for disability-adjusted life years is related to non-communicable diseases. We're actually winning the war against communicable diseases, but the non-communicable diseases, which are heart disease, diabetes, lifestyle-related diseases, are increasing and stealing quality of life from people. We also see the leading cause of death globally are non-communicable diseases, and by 2030, it's estimated that 3/4 of the world's population will die due to a non-communicable disease. Now we have to step back and kind of look at that through the lens and realize non-communicable diseases are largely preventable and in many cases reversible. So we could dramatically improve the quality of life of more than 3/4 of the world's population by simply changing what's on their plate. And again, this is data from JAMA, just showing in the red circle, highlighting the fact that number one cause of death and disability globally are dietary risks. This is excessive westernized dietary eating pattern. And what's amazing about this, these two statistics, is that in medical schools today, the average medical school student receives about 19 hours of nutritional education in their 4-year degree. And that's largely, ICU and hospital nutrition. But it's quite a dichotomy to recognize that the leading cause of death and disability is diet, and leading cause of is diet. And in medical schools, the education is not built to address the leading cause of death and disability. So we're educating healthcare providers in a way that we're not addressing the leading cause of death and disability. It's quite shocking. So we can begin to see, and in the remainder of this presentation, that the plate is at the center of this web of impact globally. Our individual cells down to the atomic level, as we'll talk about, and increasing out through our cellular function, through our biologic systems in our body, our DNA, our general disease protection throughout our bodies, our ability to show up as a human in our families and at work. It impacts work schedules. It impacts the health of companies financially, governments, hospitals, and it impacts as we go out in the food production, soil management, the biodiversity of life itself. forests that are cut down for food production. It impacts so many things. And it goes back to what people are choosing to put on their plates two to three times a day globally. And again, I think it highlights for all of us the exciting opportunity to regenerate every one of those systems as people begin making different choices about the food on their plate. And in healthcare, we see the evidence of this. This is a cartoon showing two people mopping up water, desperately trying to catch the puddle on the floor, when the solution is turning off the spigot, turning the handles to shut off the water. This is really what's happening in healthcare today. We are mopping up lifestyle diseases. The budget for healthcare is $4.7 trillion today. We're spending nearly 80% of that to manage lifestyle diseases, which are largely preventable and in many cases suspended and reversed through the right diet and lifestyle intervention. So if we simply change the way that we addressed healthcare by going back and turning off the handle, stopping the flow of lifestyle diseases by treating at the root, which is assisting people in making better healthy choices, growing food the right way, and using health coaches to assist patients in making a lifestyle choice, there would be more than enough money in the healthcare system to take care of everybody's healthcare needs. However, if we don't do that, the puddle on the floor is only going to get deeper, and we'll spend more and more time and effort trying to mop up this puddle. And Desmond Tutu said this: there comes a time when we need to stop pulling people out of the river and need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. And that's the question that I asked many years ago. Why are people getting sick? Where did disease come from? And it leads us to upstream, to lifestyle, to determine and discover the source of disease and to learn that it's largely preventable. And so as we begin working backwards to find out the cause of disease, and we'll talk through many of these. We've talked about at the bottom down here that, largely the primary cause for disability and death is dietary choices. And as we go back upstream, we see diseases like heart disease. We learn that there's a physiologic deterioration. The body starts to break down, hardening of the arteries, insulin resistance. We then understand that there's a deeper level cellular disruption. The mechanism of insulin sensitivity, the locks are gummed up by fat, and inflammation disrupts insulin signaling. And then we learn that all of this goes back to lifestyle choices, what we're choosing to put in our mouth, how we're choosing to manage stress every single day. But if we ask the question, what's driving lifestyle choices, we learn that it's culture. Our culture changes and affects our choices, making it more difficult to make healthy choices. And in some cases, like the blue zones, really activating and creating a downhill effect in lifestyle choices where you almost don't have to think about it. And again, this is just from a study to highlight the same point that as we go backwards to lifestyle and choice of behaviors, we see that it's the living conditions that impact our lifestyle choices. In fact, the leading social determinant of health in many communities today is the zip code. It's not even the lifestyle choices, it's where they live, because where people live impacts their lifestyle choices. And where we live is ultimately determined by the culture that shapes those living conditions. And over the last 150 years, our culture has changed dramatically in the values for food, the understanding of healthy foods, how to prepare foods, sourcing of foods, the marketing of foods, all has changed. And so our culture is changing our living conditions, which has directly impacted the lifestyle choices of people, leading to this epidemic of lifestyle diseases that we see not only here in the United States, but globally. And any street, not only in America, but Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, and Bangkok, Thailand, wherever you visit, this is what you see today. Ultra-processed food, fast food becoming the norm for many people on a daily basis. So just a question, this is talk about zip code. If you think about your neighborhood, your community, and it's just, again, helping you think about how you can find better resources. What does your community look like? Do you have resources like farmers markets? Do you have friends, or you have your own garden? Do you have a potluck community that you can join on a monthly basis to encounter friendly, happy people? We'll talk about more of that at the end. But again, instead of a negative slant on the unhealthy community resources, I just wanted to pause and give you a moment to think about the positive resources in your zip code, and maybe even how you can begin contributing to some of those positive elements in your own zip code. Because your zip code, the social communities do make a difference. I just wanted to highlight these studies from social communities. If you have a friend who becomes obese, your chances of becoming obese increase by 171%. Recent studies have shown that quitting spreads through social networks. If your significant other quits smoking, you have a 67% decreased risk of smoking. Lower BMIs if you have healthier friends. People inoculate their homes with their own microbiome. And they found that if you're lonely, not connected to a community, is the equivalent of 6 alcoholic beverages a day or 10 cigarettes. That's worse than the unhealthy food choices. So being connected in community has far-reaching health benefits. Really, this is about, reversing the course that we're on. There's a lot of talk about sustainability today. There's a lot of talk about disease management today. But we're rapidly reaching a tipping point in every area. Individuals are reaching a tipping point in their health. Obesity rates continue to go up. Disease rates continue to go up. We're seeing diseases at younger and younger ages. We see the financial implications in hospitals and communities. We have soil erosion globally. We have more contaminated food systems. We have environmental crises. And so we're way beyond the idea of management or sustainability. We have to find a pathway to reverse and regenerate. And I sincerely believe that pathway begins with what we put on our plate. So what I'd like to do for the next maybe 50 minutes is just take you on a short journey, looking at the kind of atomic biochemical level of how food interacts with our bodies, stepping up to the genetic, looking at epigenetics, then going out into the cell biology, then more into complex biologic systems in our body, the organ systems like the heart, understanding the microbiome, and then talking about agriculture and the environment. Food is incredibly powerful, and we often forget that when we eat food, within 4 to 6 hours, food is impacting our cellular physiology at the deepest levels. Here's an example. When we eat food, there are alterations at the genetic level, turning switches on and off that result in persistent inflammation throughout the body. The lifestyle choices that we make on a daily basis are actively turning on and turning off these epigenetic switches. All of this is related to this idea of dietary inflammatory index. And just to pause for a minute to think about what inflammation is. Inflammation is caused by irritation or damage to a system, which results in these free radicals. Free radicals really are just electrons that are looking for a partner or a pair. And as they're looking for a paired electron, they damage more cellular structures, causing a spiraling of inflammation. So lifestyle choices create free radicals, which drives inflammation. I often think about free radicals like socks, that when you put your socks in the laundry and you start folding socks, or you're looking for socks in the morning, there's a missing sock. And so it creates a lot of extra energy looking for that pair of socks. The same way, those free radical individual electrons look for a pair, and in doing so, they create damage that causes inflammation. They've done a lot of research looking at the effects of low-grade systemic inflammation because of these dietary and lifestyle choices. And they found that there are at least 27 different diseases directly linked to inflammation. They include this list here: depression, mental illness, cardiovascular disease, cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, etc. All linked to this inflammatory index. As the inflammatory index goes up, so does the risk of all of these diseases. This inflammatory process can be dramatically reduced with a shift in diet, as we see in this pictogram here, from a westernized dietary pattern to a healthy plant-based dietary pattern. Inflammation can also be triggered by something called endotoxins. So in animal products, which people often choose to eat because of the protein, there are a number of inflammatory mediators, including endotoxin. Endotoxin is the outer covering of a piece of bacteria. And so they did a randomized control trial looking at the effects of endotoxin on individuals. When people were exposed to endotoxin, in the top we see 2 spikes of inflammation about 2 to 3 hours after they were exposed to the endotoxin. So the body becomes inflamed 2 to 3 hours after the meal. But what's very interesting, because inflammation is systemic, not just local, we see at the bottom that at the same time period, 2 to 3 hours, there was an increase in social disconnection and depressed mood. The brain is also inflamed. And so in this way, we can begin to understand that this whole systemic inflammatory process is driving not only inflammation in the arteries of the heart, but causes people to feel more depressed and less connected. And then what happens? People look to feel better, and they choose foods that give them a little boost, often sugar, fat, and salt. And so they eat foods that are unhealthy, that cause inflammation. And in just a few more hours, they're feeling bad again. So they feel bad, they're eating foods to feel better, causes more of an inflammatory response, and then they feel bad again. So these are driven by free radicals at that atomic level. But the good news is that because there are so many antioxidants in plants, antioxidant is a chemical nature of a plant. Oftentimes it gives color to the blackberries and the greens of the arugula in the salad. Those phytochemicals and antioxidants have extra electrons that they can contribute to the inflammatory process. So as we're eating this beautiful salad, your body has more electrons to donate to those free radicals, which binds them and prevents the inflammatory process from persisting. Secondarily, and this is the beauty of food, it's not just that antioxidants take care of the free radical issues, but the antioxidants and phytochemicals turn off a key step in inflammation at the genetic level, the NF-kappa beta, which has been linked to all of these diseases and more than 400 different genes in the inflammatory process. And then a level below that, which is even more amazing, that the fiber in the plants that is not digested by our guts is digested by the microbiome. The microbiome, the bacteria, eat that fiber because that's their favorite food. And as they're eating the food, they produce waste products. One of those is a short-chain fatty acid called butyrate. Butyrate works locally to tighten up the tight junctions in the gut, reduce inflammation, reduce the risk of colon cancer, but it also enters the bloodstream, balances blood sugars for 4 hours, and it travels and turns off the inflammatory switch as well. And so at multiple levels, through that beautiful, healthy salad, from reducing free radicals because of the donation of electrons, to turning off NF-kappa beta, and the fiber being used to produce butyrate to turn off inflammation. Multiple levels, the body reduces inflammation because you took time to enjoy a beautiful, delicious salad. We also see that those same phytochemicals that you would find maybe in a cup of tea, curcumin, an Indian meal, a nice curry dish, broccoli, sulforaphane. They work inside of the brain to reduce inflammation through a number of mechanisms. And by reducing neuroinflammation, it improves mood, reduces depression, anxiety, improves mental clarity, mental function, and some tests is actually shown to improve school performance and testing. And it's amazing to think that, people every day are eating food just like this. And to those of us that are healthy, we look at this food and it has zero appeal. But for most people, this looks delicious. But when we think about it, it's delicious just for a few minutes on the tongue. And then the pleasure of that food is gone. But for hours after that, the body is inflamed, the body's on fire. Damage is being created throughout all the cellular structures. Genetic switches are being turned on and turned off immediately after that meal. But when we look at this food, it looks vibrantly alive. And the colors are different. The look and feel of this food is different. And even the contrast of the two pictures, I think, directs us in a little better way to understanding the benefits of plants. And we can look and almost feel the impact of those plants on our body. There's a very interesting study that, again, highlights the benefit of the antioxidants in darker colored fruits and vegetables. This was a study that looked at the impact of low quality, and that just simply means lower density of micronutrients in lighter colored fruits and vegetables versus darker colored fruits and vegetables. And we can see that after 2 weeks, measurement of inflammation in the high antioxidant group, dark colored fruits and vegetables went down dramatically. But in the lower antioxidant group, they had an uptick in inflammation. Their bodies were not managing inflammation as effectively as the group that was getting food with a higher degree of antioxidants. Again, the donation of the electrons, probably more important than we realize, but those phytochemicals, again, turning off those inflammatory switches. So it just gives us some direction on making sure our plates are colored with dark colored fruits and vegetables. We can still eat these other fruits and vegetables. They're absolutely delicious and have a lot of nutritional value. But again, just focusing and making sure we're getting lots of dark colored fruits and vegetables as well. So as we move into more of an epigenetic level, again, this study just shows us that 90% of the diseases today genetics is not the major cause of those diseases. It's lifestyle. And it's a huge misunderstanding for people today because they believe that there's no hope, that they don't need to change because it's their family genetics that leads to the diseases. In fact, I was asking a gentleman how long he wanted to live, just trying to inspire him that, you can live a long, healthy life. And he said, I'm only going to live to 48. I said, 48? Why are you only going to live to 48? He said, because every man in my family has died before age 50. And so he was assuming that because of the genetics of his family, his lifespan would be the same. And it's a very limiting and incredibly sad belief system. But the good news is that because of our understanding of epigenetics, the layer above the genes that is affected by our lifestyles that can turn on and turn off the genetic switches, we understand that epigenetics can be influenced by lifestyle and can dramatically overcome even the most significant genetic susceptibilities to lifestyle diseases. Dr. Michael Greger once said that genetics loads the gun and our lifestyle choices pull the trigger. And so that can even be on the health side. We can dramatically overcome these genetic limitations by making better lifestyle choices. This is just to highlight that, it's our activity levels, it's our food, it's our consumption of television that creates fear. It's the lack of sunlight exposure and being outside versus activity, stress reduction, peaceful living, plant-based diets, which is the solution for so many things. It really solves 80% of the disease burden in America today. And this is, I think, helps us understand the potential and the power of epigenetics, that it's not just the single generation that's really impacted by this. It's the downstream generations that also receive either a blessing or a curse from the lifestyle choices of their parents and grandparents. And we can see on the top picture that the second generations are affected through a transgenerational effect. And in the bottom, it can be a third generation. Mother's lifestyle choices impact the fetus and the germ cells in the fetus, the eggs and the sperm. Childhood lifestyle exposures affect those genes, which then during fertile years can be passed on to the next generation. And as that generation grows up and goes back to carrying children, some of those multi-generational epigenetic effects from the lifestyle choices, food, stress, etc., toxin exposure, are carried on to the next generation. So the good news is that for all of us, if we make changes today, we can change our epigenome today. But the really good news is for families that you can give an inheritance of good health by making different choices today. Healthy choices lead to a transgenerational inheritance of good health, vibrancy in life, and disease protection. And really what happens is that through those choices, and by turning on these genetic switches and turning off the disease switches, we bend the curve on healthy aging. And this research study shows it's the healthy lifestyle, physical activity, epigenetic reprogramming through choices like polyphenols in berries, soy polyphenols from edamame and soy products, tofu, block DNA, methyltransferases, sulforaphane found in broccoli normalizes DNA. And if we're not utilizing those healthy plants, we can have not only normal aging, but through unhealthy choices, premature aging where the cells actually break down at a faster rate. But the good news is it's all in our choices every day. And again, coming back to the idea that plants and fiber have an impact, the digestion of these plants and the fiber, again, produces that short-chain fatty acid butyrate, which not only turns off NF-kappa beta and inflammation, but butyrate impacts a number of gene expressions, including the expression of in cancer, VEGF, which grows blood vessels into the cancer cells, increasing their growth rate and ability to metastasize, reduces inflammation, improves insulin resistance, decreases the intestinal biosynthesis of cholesterol, upregulates the BDNF, which supports the connections inside of the brain, and activates stem cells. So the fiber that we're eating produces butyrate, which then goes to dramatically change the genetic expression throughout our bodies. Kind of moving out of the nucleus of the cell into the cell itself and looking at some of the data, we see that there is biologic versus chronologic age. And so there's a key pathway when we look at this that contributes to more rapid or slower biologic aging. We can be 50 years old, but our cells don't have to be 50, they can actually be younger. Or we could be 50 and our cells may be 70. One of the key pathways is autophagy. And so that's basically that as a cell ages, it undergoes a process of being broken down, chewed up, and then those materials are used to produce new cells. There are a number of key pathways in autophagy that are important for maintaining a healthy, younger biologic age. We see IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor 1, which is directly impacted by a whole food plant-based diet. The mTOR pathway is impacted by the phytochemicals, the color chemicals in the plants, exercise, and low diets in methionine and leucine, which largely come from animal products. We see AMPK pathway is directly impacted by the sulforaphane in cruciferous vegetables like kale and broccoli. Sirtuins, which are impacted by calorie restriction, doing some fasting every year, by phytochemicals and by exercise. So again, just pointing out that inside of our cells, this key autophagy pathway is positively impacted by a whole food plant-based lifestyle. The powerhouses of the cell, the mitochondria, are also impacted. And we see that we can see that these powerhouses not only become more efficient, but their antioxidant capacity is improved. That's glutathione. And we also see that there's a biogenesis of mitochondria. So not only are the mitochondria that you have more efficient to generate more power, but we also see that the mitochondria increase in number. And so when they look at mitochondria in endurance athletes that are on a whole food plant patient, mitochondria and more of them, which gives them really a performance advantage. But for all of us every day, this is a source of greater energy and endurance simply by making better choices. Again, this is just a summary of some of the cellular optimization of plants. It reduces the fat in our muscles, which contributes to insulin resistance. It reduces IGF-1 levels, which can be related to a reduced risk of cancer. It normalizes leptin and adiponectin levels, which balance hunger signals. Again, it reduces the inflammatory mTOR pathway and cancer risk. It inhibits microglia in the brain, which are related to neuroinflammation, which directly impacts the way we feel every day. It optimizes a pathway called NRF2, which protects against cancer, and it increases the production of nitric oxide. The beautiful colors of blueberries increase nitric oxide, which opens up the blood vessels, improving blood flow to every part of your body. This is a study from the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, which again shows us that biologic vascular age, looking again at the aging of tissues, can be directly tied to our lifestyle. On the left, we see the lifestyle choices and diseases that contribute to early aging of the blood vessels. On the right, with the green numbers, you see that, avoiding alcohol, healthy sleeping habits, high fruit, vegetable consumption, some nuts, seeds, legumes, all lead to improved biological age. I just want to highlight in this study so that we know science here. This study pointed out that moderate alcohol consumption was beneficial. However, all the studies subsequent to this one, which was produced in 2020, really highlight that there is no safe level of alcohol consumption. There is no benefit. It always leads to accelerated biologic aging. Now moving out, looking at cells that combine together to make biologic systems like angiogenesis, that's the growth of blood vessels, and the microbiome. So we are actually more, we have more genetic DNA from bacteria than we do from our own human DNA. We are colonized by bacteria. We are a living ecosystem on our skin, in our mouths, through our gut, and that their composition, the communities of those bacteria dramatically impact our health. And that the lifestyle choices on those communities of bacteria are profound. We see that inactivity or activity enhances the composition of those cells. We see that C-sections and formula feeding change the microbiome of babies for more than a year. Sleep versus sleep disruption changes the microbiome. Antibiotics, the leading source of antibiotic exposure is not doctors and not prescription pads. It's actually animal agriculture, and more than 80% of the antibiotics that are produced for animal agriculture. The westernized dietary pattern dramatically changes the microbiome, as does stress. And so modulating those lifestyle factors changes the health of the microbiome, which is responsible for 75% of the health of the immune system, and coordinates a number of activities throughout the body. This is just to show the impact of a plant-based diet versus an animal diet on the development of insulin resistance. We can see in the first chart here that plant materials change the types of bacteria, which lead to the production of short-chain fatty acids and anabolic enzymes, and leading to improved insulin sensitivity. The study also showed that people eating high-fat, protein-rich diet changes the bacteria to these negative types of bacterial populations, which leads to a change in the production of short-chain fatty acids, inflammation, leading to leaky gut and diffuse insulin resistance. Just going to close these real quick. So we also see that the polyphenols downregulate the inflammatory network as well. Just as a reminder to say that butyrate, again, turns off NF-kappa beta. NF-kappa beta is critical in this whole angiogenesis formation. And so angiogenesis is essentially the growth of blood vessels throughout the body. On the left, we see this beautiful picture of blood vessels, which really looks like a tree. And as those little branches grow, it's kind of an arborization of the branches of the tree. It's mediated by a number of factors, including VEGF. When this angiogenesis is out of balance, it creates two problems, both excessive growth of blood vessels and insufficient growth of blood vessels. So on the one side with excessive, you can see the list of problems, including cancer, endometriosis, obesity. On the right side, we see the balance of the impact of the imbalance of poor blood vessel growth with chronic wound healing, peripheral arterial disease, neuropathies, etc. And so it's not about trying to get more or less angiogenesis. It's actually trying to balance the system that leads to a healthy body and the avoidance of many of these diseases. This is actually a picture of blood vessel growth into a cancer cell on the left. And we can see that this cancer cell is actually attracting blood vessels to itself by increasing the local blood vessels to produce VEGF. So the blood vessels grow into the cancer cell. Now the cancer cell has all of this opportunity to receive nutrition and to grow more rapidly. And at the same time, you can imagine if a small piece of the cancer cell, the cancer flipped off, it would have an escape route up the blood vessels and be able to migrate to a different part of the body and start growing there, which is a metastasis. So this angiogenesis is one of the key steps in the development of aggressive cancers that would kill people. Largely, a cancer could be non-threatening if it did not have this step of angiogenesis. So the question is, what then normalizes angiogenesis? How do we prevent the growth of those blood vessels in cancer cells? How do we optimize the growth of blood vessels into damaged tissues? Again, the research shows that things like berries inhibit VEGF, again, that growing of blood vessels into cancer cells, and normalize the growth of blood vessels into damaged tissue. They have the perfect modulatory balance of this anti-inflammatory, anti-angiogenic effect, while at the same time creating the opportunity for natural healing when the growth of blood vessels is necessary. So because angiogenesis is recognized as a key step in cancer progression, the Angiogenesis Foundation asked a very important question. They said, which foods will help to normalize angiogenesis? And so they did the research and they came up with this list from the Angiogenesis Foundation, that it's essentially all the greens, dark colored fruits and berries, beautiful spices, onions and garlic and herbs, green tea and ginseng, mushrooms that normalize the angiogenesis process. Again, highlighting the incredible potential of a beautiful whole food plant-based plate to begin impacting this area of angiogenesis. Now kind of stepping out and looking at the body more as a system, looking at organ systems and some of the randomized control trials that show that when we change what's on our plate, we actually begin reversing disease. We can assume that's true because we've just looked at all the different systems in the body that are impacted by those healthy choices. But what do the randomized control trials say? Here's just a summary of those randomized control trials. We see that there's a greater sustained weight loss in whole food plant-based groups at 1 and 2 years than any other study. There's improved beta cell function and insulin sensitivity. Beta cells are the little cells inside of our pancreas that produce insulin. And the research shows that they not only improve their function, but they can be regenerated if they're not completely injured. Improved cholesterol and lipid levels, reduced depression and anxiety, improved peripheral neuropathy. Now, this is really important because peripheral neuropathy is a very painful condition where the little nerves, especially in the legs and feet, become injured or damaged because the blood supply has been impacted. It's a very painful condition. Medicine does not have a good solution. I used to treat this regularly in my previous practice. And because there's no great solution, we use medications to try and manage the pain, but the medications cause weight gain, fatigue, tiredness, and some depression. So sometimes you get more problems than you started with. Excuse me, but the good news is, when they look at studies with people that are dealing with peripheral neuropathy, they find that an aggressive intervention with whole food plant-based nutrition in just 1 to 2 weeks can dramatically reduce their pain, even in moderate to severe peripheral neuropathy, because it's improving blood vessel health, it's restoring blood supply, it's reducing inflammation. And if there's not too much nerve damage, the nerves can actually begin to regrow. So it's really good news for people that are struggling with a very difficult and painful condition that medicine does not have a solution for today. We see dramatic changes in inflammatory bowel diseases like ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease in just 12 weeks. And as we note here, just by changing the diet, there's a dramatic increase in butyrate production at just 4 weeks. And I love to just comment on that because it shows us the body rebounds very quickly. We give it the right opportunity, it wants to rebound to health. There's a great study that highlights the fact that comparison between a vegetarian diet and the American diabetes diet results in a much greater reduction in medications, we can see here, greater reduction in weight, more insulin sensitivity. But the real juice of this study is that we see at the cellular level again, significant changes, greater insulin sensitivity, which we would expect, a balance in the adiponectin and leptin, which reduces hunger signals and fat storage. And down here, importantly, we see that there's more vitamin C and more reduced glutathione available. And the importance there is that really tells us that the body has less inflammation. The vitamin C and SOD, superoxide dismutase, and the glutathione are all anti-inflammatory, antioxidant systems. And because there's more of them available, it tells us less was being used to deal with the inflammation from the diet. And so we see that the vegetarian, the plant-based diet is superior in every way when we look at the larger components of healthcare, medications, weight, insulin sensitivity. But in the cellular level, the vegetarian diet is also superior because it's changing the function of the cells and reducing the inflammatory load on the body. And we see in the note here that none of those changed in the ADA group. And so this is what, as a contrast, we think about this. When someone's diagnosed with diabetes, the diet that they're prescribed is an ADA diet, which does not have a tremendous impact on the major factors, but it's also not improving their health overall, again, increasing their risk for some of the diseases that are associated with type 2 diabetes over a long period of time. Now, as we go out and look at more of the broad studies, the meta-analyses, and the population studies, we can begin to see that there are some very interesting findings. One of them I just want to highlight because it's important for us to understand. Most people don't realize that the leading nutritional deficiency in America today is fiber. It is not anything else, it's fiber. And so when we look at the sources of fiber, it's fruits and vegetables. And all of us have been told that we need to eat 3 to 5 fruits or vegetables per day, 5 a day recommendation. But when they actually look at the number of people that are meeting that recommendation, they find that it's about 10% of people that are actually just getting 5 fruits and servings per day, which means that people are grossly deficient in fiber. And today, only 4% of any age group meets the basic requirement for adequate fiber intake. The adequate intake for people is between 25 and 35 grams. And so there is no age group that is meeting those on a regular basis. As we've seen, fiber is critically important for reducing diseases. But we also see when we look at large population studies that as we get out to 60, 70 grams of fiber per day, there's a dramatic reduction in the risk for heart disease. There's a dramatic reduction in the risk for type 2 diabetes and all-cause mortality. Greater servings, as we get out to 10 servings per day, there's a greater reduction in diseases, which, if we're looking at 8 to 10 servings, we're in that 60 to 70 grams of fiber per day. And these studies, again, are some large studies that highlight, as we're moving into this new age of understanding the power of food, that maximal protection is from 10 servings of fruits or vegetables per day, with a potential reduction of 7.8 million deaths globally per year. That is powerful regenerative opportunity by encouraging people and helping people through local production of food and reducing the costs by local production to increase their consumption. This one also shows the current results, again, increasing to 800 grams per day for a reduced risk of heart disease and all-cause mortality from stroke. And this one, again, is showing that a healthy plant-based diet, 10 servings of fruits or vegetables per day, has the greatest reduction in risk of type 2 diabetes. But even if we're eating a unhealthy plant-based diet, we see an increased risk. And so it's really the healthy plant-based diet that results in the greatest risk. This from the Journal of American College of Cardiology highlights the same fact that it's whole plant foods, the consumption of fiber, that reduces the risk of heart disease. But an unhealthy plant-based diet has the same risk as an animal diet in the risk of heart disease. So it's the fiber-rich, antioxidant-rich plants that are dramatically reducing the risk of those diseases. And the more that we get, the greater that benefit. And then again, just looking at another large study that high animal protein intake was positively associated with heart disease and mortality, and a high plant intake was inversely associated with all-cause mortality. Again, eating more plants, closer to 10 servings per day, makes a significant difference. And so we have to ask just for a minute, why is this happening? Animal protein has the same amino acids as plant, but what's contained in the package is really important. And if we took 500 calories of plant protein versus animal protein, we can really begin to see the difference. Inside of the animal protein, we find that their animal protein contains saturated fat, cholesterol, inflammatory molecules like heme iron, Nu-5GC, endotoxins, etc. And it also contains saturated fat, which is inflammatory. In the plants, we have no cholesterol. We have a high degree of vitamins and minerals. We have antioxidants and phytochemicals, and we have fiber. So you're getting the same amount of protein in 500 calories. And the study was done, it showed 33 grams of protein in plants, 34 grams of protein in the animals. But the regenerative capacity of the same amount of protein in plant protein is substantial compared to the inflammatory impact of the animal protein on the body. So protein for protein, it's really a package choice. Is my protein coming packaged with high degree of regenerative molecules or inflammatory molecules in the animal protein? And this is just, again, to highlight that, in population studies in people, that the mental well-being responds also to a plant-based diet. And I love you have to love the title here, Let Us Be Happy, a longitudinal UK study on the relationship between fruit and vegetable consumption and well-being. But it's important to notice in the conclusion here that mental well-being responds in a dose-response fashion. Again, every serving makes a difference. So from 5 servings to 6, from 6 to 7, from 9 to 10, every serving makes a difference. And so the closer we get out to that 10 servings per day, 60 to 70 grams of fiber, the greater the regenerative impact on our bodies. These also have, when we change our diet, there's an impact on a community and a hospital system. This was a project done at Geisinger Health. They identified individuals that had a hemoglobin A1C, type 2 diabetes that was poorly controlled, but they also had some food insecurity. They determined that this population of people inside of their healthcare system resulted in about $8,000 to $12,000 per month in expenses. And so they decided they were going to invest $3,000 to $4,000 per year in food for this population of people and education. They put together a comprehensive team of people from the hospital, including health coaches, nurses, pharmacists, doctors, and health coaches, to take this population of people and help them restore their quality of life. They found in a trial that the initial group of 37 patients reduced their A1Cs from 9.6 to 7.5, which was corresponded to a 40% decrease in the risk of death and serious consequences in just 1 year. The mean healthcare costs decreased by 80% from $240,000 per member per year to $48,000. Incredible. And they predicted on average a savings of about $8,000 to $12,000 per year for 1% reduction in A1C across the entire population. But again, it just shows the incredible potential for changing everything by helping people learn how to cook, prepare, and eat healthy plant-based foods. And finally, stepping out into a little bigger picture, what is the impact of eating more plants and the impact of actually growing more plants on our world that we're living in and the world that we're actually stewarding for the next generation? So this was a study that showed the impact of our current animal-based production of food around the world. It's the largest study to date, done in 2018, looked at 38,700 farms from 119 countries. And they found that more than 80% of the farmland today globally is used for livestock. And it only produces 18% of the calories and 37% of the protein. A huge disproportionate use of land for calories and protein. But we also see the impact of that animal agriculture on greenhouse gas emissions, on water pollution, air pollution, and freshwater withdrawals. The conclusion of the study, the lead researcher from Oxford said, agriculture is a sector that spans all the multitude of environmental problems. So if we don't get our plates right, we're not growing the right plants for the plates, we are dramatically impacting the environment. This is a study looking at the regenerative impact from sustainability. I like the word regenerative more than sustainability versus health score. And we can see that the vegan diet has the greatest potential for improving the environment and improving health at the same time. Animal agriculture also creates antibiotic resistance. Again, 80% of all the antibiotics that are manufactured are used in animal agriculture. And so when antibiotics are given to an animal to either promote growth or prevent disease, and there are many laws in place now to prevent the use of antibiotics for growth promotion, we see that because of the continuous exposure in those populations, bacteria mutate and they form antibiotic resistance. Contaminates the meat. We consume the meat as a population and develop antibiotic resistance. And so many antibiotics that were once very useful in treating infectious diseases are no longer effective. And now we actually are seeing fungal infections that are not treatable with our current medications, which is a big problem. And so we're not recognizing the problem is being created by the food production and our craving for meat as a population. Walter Willett, one of our most famous nutrition researchers from Harvard, published the Eat Lancet trial, 2019, the conclusion of his research. He said that transformation to healthy diets by 2050 will require a substantial dietary shift. We really need to change consumption of fruits and vegetables, and he said they need to double, and the consumption of foods such as red meat and sugar will need to be reduced by more than 50%. The plant-based diet with fewer animal foods confers greater health and environmental benefits. And so we can see that as the population begin requesting more plant-based foods, the agricultural industry would begin producing more foods and in a healthier way, which allows for the biologic systems to regenerate. And I'd just like to make a comment. This is my personal opinion based upon my experience in working with humans and other biologic systems, that the body rebounds more quickly than we might realize. Decades of impact, the presence of diseases, altered lab work, and in just weeks on a really healthy diet and lifestyle, the body begins to regenerate itself, reduce inflammation, and heal. And I sincerely believe that the earth is another biologic system that has the same capacity to regenerate itself more quickly than we might recognize. And that if we simply begin doing the right things, planting the right seeds, as we started at the beginning of this lecture, creating the right environmental change by changing the way that we grow and produce food, that our earth and its resources can actually regenerate more quickly than we might recognize. So while there's a lot of bad news looking at our environment and our resources and the land that we're handing off to the next generation, the hopeful message is that with the right choices, we can regenerate the earth and begin handing off in stewardship a healthier planet to the next generation. I just want to end with a few quick comments on lifestyle. Food is always the foundation, but the lifestyle components are also essential to being truly fully alive. Lead researcher Matt Walker from Stanford said this, based on probably about 10,000 research study papers now, the number of people who can survive on 6 hours of sleep or less and show no impairment, rounded to a whole number and expressed as a percent, is 0. So sleep is essential. And the research shows that we all need about 7 to 8 hours of sleep, ideally going to bed between 10 and 11 o'clock at night so that we don't miss the regenerative peak, which happens overnight between 12 and 3 a.m. That's when our body begins to regenerate itself, our brain regenerates itself, our body goes into a reboot mode. There's actually a little spike of inflammation that happens overnight. And that spike happens overnight because inflammation is a part of the healing process. And it happens at night because we don't have a lot of other inflammation the body needs to deal with. But if our diet is unhealthy, if we eat late, if we miss the regenerative window, our bodies stay inflamed and we miss the regenerative opportunity for our cells to be rebuilt, restored, and our brain to be cleaned up and prepared for the next day. So don't miss a good night's sleep. activity and exercise are important. And we see that the benefits of exercise are substantial. Inhibits tumor growth, overcomes the age-related loss of muscle, which largely that's muscle atrophy, but that's largely occurring actually because we stop exercising our muscles. We stop lifting weights. There's altered tumor metabolism. And again, exercise normalizes angiogenesis, restores hormonal balance, regulates the immune system. It modifies and strengthens our blood vessels. It improves our microbiome, reduces inflammation around the body, and it increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which again improves the connections and grows new connections in the brain. So adding some form of activity, at least 30 minutes, 5 times per week, is important. And I always recommend just find something you love to do and do it with all your gusto. Make sure you break a good sweat. But I also just want to highlight that it's important to do some active weightlifting and strengthening of the body. It maintains the bone strength, maintains the integrity of the muscles. It overcomes the sarcopenia, the loss of skeletal muscle as we get older, prevents falls, protects your joints from degeneration, protects your tendons from injury, like the rotator cuff. So it's really important to find a way to add in strength training to your routine on a regular basis. Mindfulness is important. Why? Because it decreases the stress hormone cortisol, and it reduces that sympathetic overactivity. Sympathetic is the fight or flight aspect of our nervous system, and mindfulness, deep breathing, which can be done relatively easily, 3 to 5 minutes a day to start, calms the entire nervous system and reduces cortisol secretion. And cortisol is related to a number of diseases, including disrupting the microbiome. Mindfulness increases your antibodies response to fight infections. It reduces CRP, or inflammation, and has a dramatic impact on our well-being. So if you're not doing mindfulness, just learn to put that into your practice, either in the morning, at lunch, or bedtime. Simple apps like Calm or Headspace can be used to practice mindfulness, just peaceful, deep breathing, an opportunity for your body to downregulate. Even practicing deep breathing during the day reduces cortisol secretion by 25%. Simple breathing at a stoplight will give you a lower level of cortisol and inflammation. Finally, gratitude. We hear a lot about gratitude, but it actually has a physiologic impact on our body. I'll just highlight these, that it activates the reward centers of the brain, increasing the release of the feel-good hormone dopamine and serotonin, and increases the feeling of bliss when we practice being grateful during our day. It enhances cognitive restructuring, reducing fear and anxiety. Again, gratitude reduces the effects of cortisol by at least 23%, lowers blood pressure, lowers inflammation, and lowers the lifetime risk of depression. Practicing gratitude and create maybe a lifestyle around gratitude facilitates improved sleep patterns, improves heart rate variability, which is again a stress measure, enables people to be more likely to exercise, eat healthier diets, improves relational trust, loyalty, and sustainability in relationships, enhances community connection, increases neuromodulation in the brain, and reduces guilt, shame, and violence. Incredible. So this is another one of those freebies that every day we can just get into the habit of being grateful for as many things as we see in our day, and focusing to be grateful rather than looking with a scarcity mindset or fear. So just in conclusion, I want to encourage you to, it's learning from your past, as we started with Maya Angelou. I did then what I knew how to do. We're learning, and we now do better. Live today with enthusiasm, be grateful, and envision tomorrow with great hope, because there's regenerative capacity in our plate in many places, habits and attitudes that we make each day. And then through that process of individuals making changes, all of you encouraging the people around you to make changes, both by your example and the things that you share, there's a multiplied effect that can create a world that is transformed. through a powerful plate and a healthy lifestyle. We can begin turning back the clock and regenerate. Stephen Covey said this, that to learn and not to do is to not really learn, and to know and not do is really not to know. So it's incumbent on all of us as we learn to activate the information that we've learned and to put it into practice in a meaningful way so that our lives become the best testimony. Not the studies, they become supportive, but it's the vibrancy and the life that people see in us that makes people say, what are you doing? And then with joy, you can share with them what you're doing. So put this into practice, share it with people, first through your example, and then through programs like this amazing conference that they put together. And through the process of continuous improvement, we all get better. We have to realize that, we are actually stewarding resources in the planet for the next generation. And I like to always end with just a comment that, it's not about us. Our food choices are not just about us. Our lifestyle choices are not just about us, disease reversal, inflammation, turning on and off switches, etc. So much of those choices really go back to the idea that we are stewarding this planet and its resources for the next generation. And the potential and the power of making choices to eat delicious food that comes from regenerative systems and plants allows us daily through our 100 bites, through our 2 to 3 meals a day, to begin investing in a better world for the children that are following us. And then by sharing this information with people, we can begin impacting their lives and this next generation as well. So thank you for your time and attention. We've got a good 30 minutes, I think, for questions. This is my organization, the Plantrition Project, that I co-founded with my partners, Tom Dunham and Susan Benegas, to educate healthcare providers globally. There's some wonderful free resources on our website, plantritionproject.org, downloadable quick start guides. We have a school for healthcare professional students that it's free, called Plantrition University. We have a free journal, the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention. And we're doing work globally to educate healthcare providers about the power of food to transform life. So I'll turn it back over, and I'm here for any questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Stoll. That was great. So we're going to begin the Q&A portion. Just before we do, though, what would be, you put up the last slide that showed your organization. What's the website, and how would they get in contact with you if they wanted to?
Yeah, the website is www.plantrition, PLANTRICIAN, project.org.
Great, thank you. And can they get in contact with you through the website?
They absolutely can, yes. You can contact me through the website. Thank you for putting this up. This is all of our resources. We have a conference for healthcare providers, the International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference. And you can find all of the resources there, including these free quick start guides that are in at least 6 languages that can be downloaded for free anywhere in the world.
Great. And for anybody who would like to ask the doctor a question, you can do so in Zoom. The instructions for how to do so are in chat. So, so you're the co-founder of Plantrition Project and the International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference. What are the goals in well, first of all, what's wrong with the educational process of the healthcare system? And what gaps are you aiming to fill through these organizations?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question, Michael. When we look at the healthcare education, it's not addressing the roots of our current disease problem. As I mentioned, the leading cause of death and disability is diet, and secondarily lifestyle. And in the healthcare system, education today, we're getting 19 hours of education around nutrition, and none of that has to do with the roots of disease using nutrition as a primary intervention to address disease. So there's a real disparity there between the need in the community and education. And it's largely because we have a different model of disease. We have this biomedical model where we've reduced things down into like single disease parts or single receptors, and we've gotten lost in the details, the granularity of disease, and we've just simply tried to tweak through medications those little receptors without stepping back and saying, well, why are those receptors altered? Why are we seeing that problem? Well, why is that system a problem? Where does that come from? Oh, it comes from the food and lifestyle that we're living. And we got lost in healthcare because of our fascination with compartmentalization, reduction, and receptors, and then the pharmaceutical industry solution for treating those problems with medications. Now, I want to just make sure sometimes medications are necessary and important. I'm not against medications. Sometimes medications save lives, like antibiotics. But when we're looking at lifestyle diseases, the solution is not a medication. The solution is the cause, which was an unhealthy lifestyle, and simply transforming that.
So, you pointed to different studies, and we've had a bunch of speakers talking, showing different studies. There doesn't seem to be a shortage of
No.
research and knowledge that reinforces this. We've had a bunch of speakers, and they all have different sources. They've all come to it from a different way. None of them have come to it through learning about this stuff in their medical school. With all of this knowledge out there, which seems to be irrefutable, right? You have people like Dean Ornish and Dr. Esselstyn, who's literally were able to reverse the #1 killer in the United States. What is blocking the ability for this stuff to be recognized, for the powerful game changer that it has the potential to be? Clearly, if this was in a pharmaceutical drug, everyone would be taking it, right?
That's
So
right.
what are the hurdles? And then that's a general question. And then more specifically, what are the hurdles that you see with your organization in trying to get this word out?
Yeah, that's a really insightful question. And it's kind of a multifaceted problem. One is simply reimbursement in healthcare. There is no reimbursement for lifestyle medicine and nutritional education. There's lots of reimbursement for procedures, for high volume patient care, but to sit and reverse disease, the system does not reimburse healthcare providers or healthcare systems for that. That's a major hurdle. And once reimbursement becomes available to healthcare providers for lifestyle conditions, that will dramatically open up a new opportunity for healthcare to deliver lifestyle. That's number one. Number two, there's a large amount of money that's given to education through the pharmaceutical companies and medical device companies. And so that ends up driving kind of some preferential education in medical schools toward that reductionistic model of using pharmacologic medications to treat these diseases rather than lifestyle. There's also a gap that occurs because of the national board exam. Medical schools teach information that's included on the national board exam. And because there's no questions right now on the national board exam for this kind of lifestyle and plant-based nutrition, medical schools don't include that in the curriculum, which is very interesting. And the challenge to get information on the national board exam, it has to be created by a recognized medical society. And still to date, like the American College of Lifestyle Medicine has not reached that place where it's recognized in its ability to contribute questions to the national board exam. So it's like this kind of multiplied complex scenario. But the good news is we're going through the back door now. American College of Lifestyle Medicine has created special interest groups for medical school students. And we have a number of residencies, more than 100 residencies nationwide that are double board certified in lifestyle medicine and other medical specialties. We have the Plant Nutrition University, which I mentioned, our free platform for any healthcare professional student, from a health coach to a doctor to a dentist, physical therapist, et cetera, chiropractic. They can log on to our platform and begin taking courses, free courses, and learn in parallel to their allopathic education. Dr. Michael Clapper, through Moving Medicine Forward, is speaking on medical school campuses and Zoom. So there's lots of us working PCRM on the periphery to kind of go in through the backside to combat the problem on the front side until we can get that piece changed.
And do you see things starting to change with regard, you mentioned culture in the beginning, and I'll start off with the culture of the doctors, for example. Do you see the culture of doctors? Are they hungry for this information, or are they skeptical? What are you seeing?
Generally there's an uptick in interest and reception by healthcare providers. When I started this about 20 years ago, I saw a lot of crossed arms and stern faces when I would lecture at hospitals and medical schools. Today, there's a lot more interest and a lot warmer reception because I think people are starting to see more of the science and it's become more of a part of the general conversation in healthcare systems. So that's definitely a positive trend that I'm seeing. We still have a long way to go. I still see a lot of crossed arms and stern faces and not welcome in certain areas. And for healthcare too, I think because reimbursement is so difficult and doctors are so busy, it's difficult for them to think about changing the way they practice or learning something new because it impacts so many elements of their life to do this.
Great, thank you. Got a couple of people from the audience who'd like to ask you a question. Sharon K., please state where you're from and ask your question. Sharon?
Unmute. Can you hear me?
There you are.
Okay. Hi, I just wanted to thank you for the whole presentation, but a specific example. I raised all my kids in Midland, Texas, and have since moved to Lubbock, where I have been plant-based, whole food plant-based for 3 years, and I feel like I'm in the desert up here. And when you said Midland, which is just 2 hours away, has this coalition, I was just so excited. I've already emailed them about coming down to see what we can do. So I just so appreciate you for that. Oh my goodness. The other thing I wanted to ask was, I would have never known about them. Is there a directory anywhere where these kind of whole food plant-based projects are taking place where we could look? I travel all over the country to visit friends, and I would love to know about projects and things like this that are going on in specific areas. Do you know of anything like that?
That's a great question. And I don't know of a specific directory for kind of those projects. We have a directory at Plant Nutrition Project called Plant Nutrition Providers, which helps you locate healthcare providers in places all over the world that are plant-based. But I don't know of a directory to locate projects. I like that idea. I'll take it back to the team. It's a good idea, Sharon.
I was thinking about Nelson Campbell's. I just attended one of his retreats, and where the pods are, the Plant Pure pods, and and things like that are popping up everywhere, but we don't really know where they are. So yeah, I'd say go for it. Yeah.
It's a good idea. We have a map because I recommended last year, I just really felt like it was important to encourage people to start potlucks as a part of developing communities around the world where people can plug in and learn, because community is so important. So we have a map at Plant Nutrition Project with potlucks that are everywhere. I want to encourage everybody, if you've not started a potluck, I actually did it myself here in Nashville. I started a potluck because I wanted to build a community. But we have a growing map of all these potlucks, which are, community-wide, that allow people to connect in. But I'm thinking maybe, Sharon, we can start also including on there a list of, these projects that are going on, which might help people connect. So.
Well, yeah, I traveled through Nashville, and I'd love to be there for one of those potlucks.
That would be great.
So, anyway, you were doing great work. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you. And so speaking about, well, actually, first of all, that is a great idea to aggregate all this information because it's very challenging to navigate it. It's first you have to navigate all the nutritional information, and then you have to find community. So how do you, in your organization, seek to foster community and support?
Yeah, in my community, I work in a healthcare, just a small practice, a functional medicine practice where I do regenerative medicine, lifestyle medicine. And that's part of the reason that I started a potluck. As I looked around and it was kind of disjointed, and I thought, at least, I can provide a network of people and opportunities for patients that I see to come and join a community, to try healthy food, to learn from other people, to find people that can provide support and accountability. And I was thinking of like the lowest cost and time commitment to do something, and a potluck seemed like the greatest idea. Not over organized. Everybody brings something healthy. We actually had it last night in downtown Franklin, just south of Nashville. We had about 20 people, talked about plant-based nutrition. People shared testimonies. We enjoyed great food. People connected. And I found that's a really efficient way to start communities. They did the same in Midland, Texas as well. That was kind of a secret in Midland. They formed a potluck, and that brought together community leaders, eventually hospital administrators, the mayor. And through those potlucks, they started to form a lot of these ideas that transformed their community.
That's great. And when you first started to move your medical practice more into this kind of space where you're providing root cause prevention as opposed to just throwing pills at people, how did your patients respond to saying, hey, you really need to change what you're eating? And how did you overcome the challenges of people not wanting to take responsibility for their own health and thinking it's genetic and just wanting, a quick fix through a pill or some sort of procedure?
Yeah, it was, a lot of people that would come to see me had no idea they were going to get an inspirational lecture on nutrition. And through the years, I found that, a couple of things were really important. One was that, I lived what I was talking about. If I was telling somebody, about some kind of meal change, then I better be doing it myself. And then I could speak from experience. This is how I make my oatmeal in the morning. This is how I make my smoothie. Made a huge difference, sharing my own personal experience. I also learned that sharing testimonials of other people was far more impactful than sharing science. If I led with a testimonial of somebody that was like them, that restored their quality of life, they were much more likely to receive some science. And I would only give them just this much, let them ask more questions than overload them with information. They were willing to engage in making some lifestyle changes because they were inspired. That inspiration makes a difference. We make decisions not based upon knowledge and information. We really make lifestyle changes because we're inspired and we see a different opportunity for ourselves in the future. So I really wanted to inspire people. And then I also just recognized that some people are not quite ready yet. And if they don't receive it, that's okay, because I get to see them again next month and I'll share a little bit more. And they'll have to be coming back in 3 more months and I'll share a little bit more. And I found that, being gentle and kind with people over time led to a lot of people making changes that I would never have guessed would be willing to do that.
Well, I was going to ask, can you share a story of a patient that was vehemently opposed to or not open to or seemingly not open to changing their lifestyle, and then over time they became more open to it, and then what was the results of their health transformation because of it?
Yeah, so this was kind of an interesting story. It just came to me. I was taking care of a patient. It was the wife of a gentleman that came with her to the first appointment. And I was talking to her about making a lifestyle change. And she was like warmly accepting, but not great. He was standing in the corner. He's like, I will never do that. And, he's like a, strong black leather coat, like had no interest in making changes. Next visit, I just shared a little bit more about what can happen. And I shared a story about somebody that had angina or chest pain and how they'd reversed it. I didn't know that he had the same condition. He didn't say anything. He came back 2 months later with his wife, who had made, 25 to 50% change in her diet, was doing a little bit better. He had gone full in between, really? Made a radical change in his diet. He went from like being barely able to walk to the mailbox without having chest pain. He would carry nitroglycerin to the mailbox in case he had chest pain on the way. And he was walking 3 miles. He felt great. He lost all this weight. His wife said, I don't know what happened to him. He's like whipping up these vegetable dishes in the kitchen. He never liked to cook. So, it's a it's a great story because something clicked and he was inspired and he did it, even though he said he would never make that change.
No, that's an amazing story. So you mentioned food pharmacy. Where is where is this happening? Is this happening through a hospital that's doing this?
Yeah, that was all done at Geisinger Health several years ago. And they published peer-reviewed studies. It was published in the Harvard Business Journal. And it was a collaboration with the hospital, local food banks, and some of the grocery stores to provide. They actually provided 2 to 3 meals a day for those individuals for an entire year, because they believe that, by at least providing the food for that population that had food insecurity, they could really guarantee they were getting healthy food. And, you saw the savings cost from $240,000 a year to $48,000 a year. And they spent, $24,000, $30,000 a year on food. So it's tremendous investment, return on investment. And they had healthier patients. And because of the success of that at Geisinger Health, which is kind of northwest New Jersey and northeast Pennsylvania, they started to add some more of those food pharmacies inside of their healthcare system.
And is that a hospital facility, or is that the insurance company, or are they kind of have a synergy between insurance and?
Geisinger Health is a healthcare system.
Okay.
And a hospital, and
the reason I ask is it's one of the things that when you talk to enough people about this, there's obviously a profit margin, and it's hard for a system that makes money off of people being sick to make them well and then undermine their own ability to exist. So right. I'm really inspired, we'll say, by the food pharmacy. So if we can go to Joe W., please state where you're from and ask your question. Joe?
Thank you very much, Doctor. So Joe? Is that me? Can you hear me?
There's an echo, but go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Doctor, so a practical and 2 academic questions. Fiber, is it best can we take it in the morning and at night in pills, or is it better to eat with each meal to speed elimination with the food as it's digested? And since whole food plant-based reverses disease, can we say eating anything other than whole food plant-based causes disease? And though you said we all may need medications, don't all drugs have side effects? And can we say drugs cause disease?
Okay, so we'll tackle fiber first. The beautiful thing about just eating plants, the 10 servings of fruits and vegetables we talked about in all those studies, the plants all come with fiber. And so your breakfast, lunch, and dinner are fiber. You don't have to worry about including them or adding fiber or taking fiber. And the best fiber is the fiber that comes from plants, because again, just like we talked about protein and how your protein's packaged, the same could be said of fiber. If you're getting fiber from, one of the packaged brands of fiber, or you're getting it from plants, you're actually getting all of the phytochemicals, antioxidants, vitamins, minerals in your fiber when it comes from plants, versus something that you're just spooning into a drink. So eating, working towards 10 servings of plants a day, you get all the fiber that you need, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it helps, as you said, with elimination. So that's the best way to do that. I'm going to go to the last question next on drugs causing disease. So you're right that most drugs, the vast majority, have some degree of side effect, and some are very mild and are not negative. Some are very significant, but are drugs causing disease? So, largely the cause of disease goes beyond drugs, but drugs can be disruptors of systems in some way, and can cause disruptions that lead to, other symptoms. But most diseases at the root go all the way back to, again, it's environmental exposures. It's the food that we eat. It's the stress that we carry. It's the lack of inactivity. It's the poor sleep. It's toxins in our environment that are the primary disruptors of the systems in the body that contribute to the formation of disease. I do want to point out that sometimes drugs are necessary because people don't make lifestyle changes, and they do keep people alive. If somebody has type 2 diabetes and they refuse to make a lifestyle choice, they really do need to have their blood sugar managed with metformin in order to avoid retinopathy, blindness, kidney disease, amputations. So in that way, those drugs are beneficial and actually save their life because it slows down the impact of the disease. If you get a pneumonia, take antibiotics to avoid dying from pneumonia. So that's really important. And then, Joe, just remind me the middle question again.
So if whole food plant-based reverses disease, can we say eating anything other than causes disease?
Yeah, I think if you look at the longitudinal impact of plant-based nutrition, it largely has the greatest opportunity to prevent and reverse disease. It's interesting because there are some studies coming out, ketogenic diets and carnivore diets, where they show, what they would say is disease remission in type 2 diabetes. And they would argue right now that our diet also reverses disease. But I think what's important is that, we go beyond the 6 or 12-week study in some of those diets and follow people to see what happens if you're eating that diet for a long period of time. In fact, one of the doctors that was probably the most vocal and prominent doctors recommending a carnivore diet actually had to stop eating this carnivore diet after 5 years because he was acquiring so many physical problems, joint pain, kidney issues. And he was a huge advocate for the carnivore diet, reversing disease. And early on, he's very muscular. He said, this is like, I feel great. But as he got out into that, 4 or 5 year period where the cumulative effect of his diet, the cumulative effect of inflammation began undermining his health, he recognized that, he may have seen initial benefits, but that diet actually was undermining his health because, as we talked about in this lecture, there's a chronic exposure to free radicals and inflammation, disruption of systems, which takes time to build until you reach a tipping point where disease manifests itself.
Going back to my question on drugs, I think drugs are the 3rd or 4th largest cause of death in the United States. Doesn't that indicate that drugs cause disease?
Yeah, well, it's, part of that is actually medication errors in hospitals, where it's the improper dosing, it's excessive dosing, it's allergies. So yes, in that way, and that, that would be medical errors causing disease. But drugs, they are at some level, because we're only doing one thing in the body, we realize that, the body is infinitely complex. And we can't do just one thing without impacting the body in some other way. Ozempic is a great example. We think that we're simply changing hunger signals by impacting the GL1P receptor. In reality, what we're doing is we're impacting systems globally. And now we're just starting to see some of the long-term challenges of these drugs, like loss of skeletal muscle and that's replaced with fat, impact on cognitive function over time. And so those, your comments are right, Joe, that we can't do just one thing with the medication. It disrupts the entire system at some level, and we have to be very careful and modulate the use of drugs. But there are drugs that do slow down disease processes, like metformin for people with type 2 diabetes, and gives them time to actually make a lifestyle choice. Because if they didn't do that and their blood sugars were really high, they could have all kinds of complications, including death at a very young age. So, but it's a very good comments, Joe. I appreciate them.
Great, thanks. And actually, Michael Greger, just real quickly, because we're pretty much done with our time. Michael Greger has a video on medication, and he said, talks about that the medications and all the deaths associated with it are associated with properly prescribed, properly administered drugs. So that it may be worth checking out if you're interested. So, well, thank you so much for all the awesome information that you shared with us tonight. It was great information. Really appreciate your perspective. So if we can unmute the audience, please.
Little.
Thank you.
My father.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
After school, man,